Good morning. My job today is to help you to use creativity to find still further ideas of relevance to your company. Our starting point is a recognition that logic alone will not find all of the opportunities available to a company. You frequently have to suspend conventional thinking to find unconventional ideas. And so I will be introducing you to some creativity techniques to take you beyond the confines of logic. However, before introducing you to those techniques, I want to give you some background, a framework for understanding this phenomenon we call creativity. Neurologists have developed several hypotheses to help explain the complexities of the human brain. They're not yet laws, but they do give us a starting point for our studies. The one we've chosen is known as the left brain, right brain hypothesis, and it helps us to understand the differences between the workings of the two parts of our brain. So say hello to your left brain and say hello to your right brain. Now, it's been realized that unlike our two eyes or our two ears, the two sides of the brain are not simply mirror images of one another. There are significant differences between the left brain and the right brain. So what are these differences? Well, firstly, the left brain. Your left brain is your seat of logic. It handles linguistics and numericals, and it handles them, processes them like a computer very, very quickly. Speed of response, a few milliseconds. The right brain is your seat of creativity. It's what your grandmother called your mind's eye. It handles mental images and it manipulates them. So unlike a computer, it's not fixed in terms of its database. So those are the differences between the left brain, which is logical, and the right brain, which is creative. Now, these differences are vital to our understanding of the way the human brain works and our study of creativity. And the most important single difference is that the right brain, although it is a lot slower than the left brain, is somewhere between 10 to the 3 and 10 to the 6 times more powerful. And what we want to do today is to unleash the creative power of your right brains. Now, let me demonstrate that you do indeed have a left brain and a right brain, and that you can detect the differences. I'm going to ask you two questions. Don't shout out the answers. Just see if you can experience the different mental mechanism. Here we go then. First question, what's the name or the number on your house? Second question, where is the name or number on your house? Now, your response to the first question was probably nearly instantaneous. If you live at number 28, you'd almost certainly have had the answer 28 before I'd finished asking the question. But the answer to the second question may have taken a perceptibly longer time to achieve. It's not a very usual question. Why does this idiot want to know where the number is on my house? And you may have had to use your right brains to answer it. You may have had to call up a mental image of the front of your house and then search it, manipulate the data. The name may be on the wall, the door, the gatepost, or nailed to the dog for all I know. And this is my basic point. The right brain can handle a different kind of question to the left brain. More unusual questions, and those unusual questions sometimes lead to unusual answers, as we'll see later. Now, that doesn't always work for everybody in an audience, so here we go. Two more questions for you. You don't need to shout out the answers, just see if you can experience a different mental effect. First question, how old are you? Second question, how old would you like to be? Now, the first question is again a logical question, logical answer. Second question, I defy anybody to answer logically. To get even close to answering it, you've got to call up mental images of what it was like to be younger. And then it really starts to get difficult because you've got to see into the future to answer the question. Now, they were just silly pairs of questions to get you to experience the difference between the two halves of the brain. Left brain logical and very fast, right brain creative, a lot slower but capable of answering a different kind of question. And we believe that if you can use your right brains, you can all see into the future. And if you can see into the future for your companies, then that will certainly give rise to a completely different kind of idea to the systematic ones you came up with yesterday. Sounds easy, doesn't it? But unfortunately it isn't, because when tested with electrodes on the head, the average early middle-aged, middle-line businessman, this character here, turns out to be between 85 and 90% left brain dominant. That means that between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday, he's hardly ever using his creative right brain. He's stuck with the logic of the left brain. Fine in one respect, in that if he wasn't logical, he probably couldn't hold the job down. However, think of the creative powers of the right brain, which are hardly ever used at work. Problem is that since the age of 5, virtually all of his training, education and experience has concentrated on honing to a fine level of perfection his logical left brain. And hardly ever during that experience is there any room for the development of creativity. Well, inside all of you, including this character, there is actually a right brain fighting to get out to create mental images of the future for your company. The question is, how do we create time and space for the right brain, the slow-moving right brain, to get a look in? Well, the answer is we use some techniques which I'll introduce you to in a little while, which bamboozle the left brain. They slow it down and confuse it, create time and space for the right brain. Put it another way, what we want you to do is to behave as you last did when you were 5-year-olds, before the process of education, which concentrates on the left brain, upset the balance between left and right. We want you to think as 5-year-olds, 50-50 balanced output, 50% from the left brain, 50% from the right brain. I've said it's hard. It's hard because it will go against all of your management training. You'll find it very, very difficult to peel back the veneer of respectability and behave like 5-year-olds. However, you probably know of some individuals in your company who often behave like 5-year-olds. They tend to be the wild card jokers, the people you don't often ask questions of these days because they come up with very peculiar answers. These individuals are probably right-brain thinkers. Conversely, I wouldn't mind betting that in your organisation there's some of these individuals. There he is, we call him, lovingly, the abominable no man. 10 good reasons why your idea won't work. But he hardly ever comes up with anything new himself. Left-brain dominant individuals tend to be in positions of seniority within companies. The question is, can anybody be creative inside a company situation and get away with it? Well, we believe they can, and moreover, their contribution to the creativity of the organisation would be superb. How do we go about it? Well, we believe that we can copy the right brain activities of other groups of individuals other than business people who we see around us. And those groups are less left brain dominant than the average businessman. If we can copy their approaches as business people, then there's a chance that we can be at least as creative. There are at least 3 groups of individuals who are less left brain dominant than the average early middle-age businessman. And this is the first group, by far the largest. You may have noticed I've been referring to businessmen so far, not business women, not meant to be a sexist stance. It's meant to underline the fact that age for age, in business, women are 15 to 20% less left brain dominant than men. But then, fellas, you always knew they weren't logical. So, maybe if we could copy the mental approaches of the ladies, we could become more creative. Well, there is a school of thought that says it's biochemical, the differences between left brain and right brain balance in men and women, but there's another school of thought that says no, it's cultural, it's something to do with upbringing. Well, if it's the latter, then maybe by changing the culture and the upbringing within your company, you can actually create less left brain dominant people. The second major group of people who are less left brain dominant than the average businessman are artists and entertainers. Neurologists use as their archetypal example of this group stand-up comics. People like Tony Hancock, who are actually manic depressive, very left brain dominant off stage, very right brain dominant on stage. Now, I can't make you all stand-up comics by lunchtime, but maybe again it's a crumb of comfort. You see, it seems that all forms of humour require the right brain. So if we can inject some humour into the situation this morning, there's a good chance that you'll be using your right brains. The third group of people, who we quote as being less left brain dominant than the average businessman, are sports people. And I'd like to give you an example from the field of cricket. 1983 series, Ian Botham taking that slip catch against the Aussies. As you can see, he takes the catch out of sight behind the back of his head. And everybody said, how did he do it? It looked impossible. Well, in sport, it's known as anticipation. And anticipation is the ability to project images forward in time so that you can tell what's going to happen. Now, okay, we're not all slip fielders, but we can all anticipate in one sport or another. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to anticipate in a business sense so as to know what's going to happen in the immediate future to your company? Just before we move into how we're going to achieve this, I want to recap briefly. We all have a left brain, we all have a right brain. But ever since the age of 5, all of your education, training, and most of your management experience has gone into perfecting the logical output of the left brain. Hardly any development of the creative output of the right brain. Being left brain dominant is fine in terms of holding the job down and managing the status quo, but it's not so good in terms of seeing into the future and being creative for your company. Now, this course is about creativity and innovation. It follows, therefore, that we cannot settle for an output which is dominated by the logical left brain. Today, we have to try to change your brain balance, get you back to nearer 50-50. Our ultimate justification for this is that if you do stay in a dominant left brain mode, then the best you can expect out of Scimitar are very similar products to existing ones, Me Too products. And as you will know, Me Too products yield poor margins and position you in the fiercest competition. However, if you can use your right brains to move away from the conventional wisdom and come up with something totally different, then you may have a world beater on your hands. Okay, so how are we going to change the culture to achieve this? Well, the most important thing is to get you to relax. So firstly, let me reassure you that we won't be asking you to use any of those techniques which do change the brain balance, but which are threatening. We won't be indulging in yoga or meditation or indeed drugs or alcohol, nor will we be trying to hypnotize you. What we will do is to give you 4 out of about 50 or so techniques which are called problem-solving techniques. And we'll use these techniques within the framework of your model to go beyond the conventional wisdom of your industry. Now, the aim is to get you to try these techniques as open-mindedly as possible and to inject a little humour into the situation. All of these things help the right brain. Above all else, you should enjoy yourself this morning. What I want to try to do is to create a non-judgmental culture, It's very easy to say, but it's very difficult to achieve. If you're using your right brains, then you will develop creative images. If you're using your left brains, then you will be judgmental and you will destroy one another's ideas. So I want you to get into the right frame of mind, and I want to paint you a little picture. See if you can follow me. I want you to think about the bumblebee. Climbs up a lovely sunflower plant. When he gets to the flower, he has a quick sip of nectar and then he flies away. Nothing unusual, happens every day. Except that in the conventional wisdom of the flying industry, it's impossible for a bumblebee to fly. His little legs are too short to gain speed along the runway, and even if he could get airborne, his wings are too small to carry that enormous body and weight. Fortunately, the bumblebee has never heard this, so he goes on flying happily every day. Can you see the picture? Well, if you can convince yourselves that you're no longer tied by conventional wisdom, then you can do the equivalent of the bumblebee flying in terms of creativity and new business ideas for your company. Creativity is about manipulating mental images in the right brain. If we can do that, then you will come up with all sorts of creative ideas which go beyond your competitors. Okay, so now let's look at the techniques that we are going to use to help stimulate your group creativity. Our first technique is attribute listing. In this, we usually focus on a competitor's product, something you would very much like to match. Mentally, we analyze their product and spot the significantly different attributes. By visualizing these combinations of key features, you can usually work out the approaches your competitor is taking. Then you look at your own business and work out your nearest available approach. And from that, you can manipulate the mental images so as to come up with a new product. Don't judge it. Build on one another's visual images and write down the idea that comes out. Attribute listing is by no means the most creative of our 4 techniques, but it is a good starting point and a good bridge between the systematic search that you've already carried out and the creativity to follow. The second technique we use is brain writing, a variant of brainstorming with which some of you are probably familiar. Brainstorming works because the rapid sequence of words and phrases thrown out by a team during a session tend to confuse the logic of the left brain. You get all sorts of strange word associations which take you away from the obvious. However, many people find the lack of structure in a brainstorming session a problem. So we use this variant called brain writing. Brain writing is a little bit like playing whispers in the school playground. Only this time you write down the secret message and pass it round the team. And by the time it comes back to you, it's a completely different story, bearing no resemblance to the original secret. We ask you to write down not a secret, but a problem which has always defeated your industry. Pass it round the team using our structured brain writing forms and await an interesting solution to return to you. You may not get a complete solution, but you'll certainly get a brand new insight. And in this way, we can go beyond statements of the obvious. Brain writing frequently produces world beaters during the scimitar system. The third creativity technique that we use is a derivative of lateral thinking. In this, we use verbal tricks to try to avoid statements of the obvious and take the discussion down different avenues. Lateral thinking, in fact, tries to find side avenues and create diversions so that you're not always giving out the obvious answer to long-standing questions. We use language to bamboozle the left brain and slow it down so that there is time and space for the right brain to spring to your aid with alternative mental images. You only have to bamboozle the left brain for 2 seconds and the right brain will present you with an alternative perception. And these perceptions may well turn a problem into an opportunity. Our fourth technique is a derivative of synectics, which we call hidden analogy.